Welcome to the boardwalk for visiting Wan Chol Wuhujujuk Provincial Park, or the Ancient Forest. But this is historically the land of the Leheli people, and they're, as a nation, their name is actually where the rivers come together, and they're associated very much with Prince George, which is of course most prominently on the mighty Fraser River. But I'm a good 100 and something kilometers east of that, and I'm 800 kilometers from the ocean. By the way, some beautiful fireweed there. That means this is the most inland temperate rainforest in the whole wide world. So it's it would be a whole lecture unto itself, and one I probably don't even feel qualified to give. The beautiful mountain ranges out in the distance. Look down, lovely clear skies, and we're lucky because British Columbia, south of here, is distinctly on fire at the moment. But these giant old growth cedars, there's a cedars boardwalk down in Mount Revelstoke National Park, but this is far inland, say over 800 kilometers in from the ocean, and you have what is really equivalent to a coastal rainforest. Now these are just deciduous stands of aspen trees, and I don't mean just because I'm sure their mothers love them, but I'm gonna wander much further up the boardwalk here and then take a film for you of the protected giant cedars, which are spectacularly large and wild. I'm not walking with my bear spray right now because there's so many people around, but it is an incredible environment here. And from here, I will carry on. The land will flatten out a little bit after I leave this forest, but my next big stop will be up at the Rocky Mountain Trench. So I'm in the Columbia Mountains, but the boardwalk is extremely well done, and I'll just take you up a few more meters now, and then I'll hike up above into the deep ancient forest and give a broader sense. There's some birch trees. You see the lovely birch bark on the side of them, and of course First Nations could make canoes, and did for thousands of years, out of those trees. And suddenly the forest becomes just a bit damper, denser, and just massive and spectacular. So here's the base of course, a giant cedar that would have been cut once upon a time. But there's so much to see and experience through here. And so welcome into the ancient forest. And I will carry on once I'm up in the big trees. All right. Well, I've hiked up in the ancient forest, and not a taxing hike at all. And in fact, I just had a drink of water, which again, I shouldn't really recommend, but it's awfully nice to do. And all the light on the Devil's Club. And I'm up by some of the biggest trees. That's why I wanted to bring you up here. Outstanding boardwalk. Obviously, this is a rainforest in every sense of the word, so you'll see that the ground is set up for rainy conditions. But it's probably, if I were to guess, maybe 22 or 23 degrees Celsius at the moment. So it's awfully lovely here. But, you know, it's a very much a random part of the world. Of course, I did do a live virtual tour at one point near, Mount Revelstoke National Park in the giant cedars there. And once again, this is an east slope of the Columbia Mountains in through here. So I'm about an hour and a half outside of Prince George. And I promise I want to scan up for some of the big cedar trees. But I'd like to come around, set it to the granddaddy of them all. And they even changed the path so people don't walk up to the massive tree, just to stabilize. And it is incredible, just the effort of people walking through these paths changes the ecosystem. Well, driving here, I did see a black bear because all the flowers were out, and he was just out. You know, sometimes you have to stop and eat the flowers, as they say. And one thing I have never seen in this forest, but I know exists, are flying squirrels. And I think that's just a really incredible thing, although I'd say I haven't seen one. All of these big plants in here, big leaves, they've already passed flowering. That is skunk cabbage. And skunk cabbage is a very interesting, slightly toxic plant. And it's the first plant that bears eat after hibernating, and it wakes their system up. So let's have a look. You see they've got a ecosystem restoration area, which of course I respect enormously. Let me scan up towards the sun just for a minute. And I will come and see this from a different angle. This is the height of these giant ancient trees. Some of them would be easily 500 years old. It is remarkable. They withstand, not that they get a lot of earthquakes, but they withstand that, and they withstand fire because of the natural dampness to their bark. And I just come back to a spectacular stand. That tree up there was damaged at some point in its life and grew around the damage. I like to say the exuberance of life when you come into these ancient forests. And I have to say, if you've never had the honor of walking through them, you do feel just the intensity of life and wellness. So in the arms of the giant, this is going to be Treebeard. I'll just give you a quick look at the plaque here. Sorry, just stabilizing the gimbal as best I can. But yeah, I love the way they say this very old cedar. Have a look at this giant of giants. Some of these massive branches that would have given way probably to windstorms over time. Isn't that just so? I have this tipped up as far as I can and lifting it up over my head. So it is beautiful. I hear the voice of a young person. I was chatting with a family hiking through here, and they live out on the west coast and so they live amongst the cedars, but still they're just enraptured by the majesty and the beauty of it. Although the gentleman was saying he worked in forestry for a number of years and said he's had enough of trudging through this devil's club. Have a look at those spines. It really makes the forest almost wonderfully inaccessible. So eventually what does bring these trees down, very rarely is it fire, although of course we're deeply concerned about climate change now as things dry out and heat up. But it tends to be windstorms that'll eventually start to bring some of these massive, massive trees down. And then they're just gradually reabsorbed into the ecosystem. And I'd say if you've ever been up to Founders Grove, up to or down to from here, but Northern California through there, those are, of course, the biggest trees in the world, but very little undergrowth because they've really closed off the canopy. Whereas here, you still have all this vibrant greenery and there's water running down. And so it really is wonderful. So I want to thank everyone for joining me here in the ancient forest. It's just a wonderful stop, long way from anywhere, but well worth it up here in, well, central, but northern British Columbia. So thank you for joining. Please feel free to subscribe and like and all that. I still don't know why I ask everyone to do that, but that's what's done on YouTube. But really, come on a live virtual tour with me on a whole bunch of different platforms. And so it's nice to connect. Just picked up one little bug there who's trying to get a meal out of me. So have a lovely rest of your day or evening or wherever you are in the world. And hello from the ancient forest, British Columbia. Just want to add one more note. This is what it looks like with one of these huge, huge trees eventually comes down. And while it's, of course, a little sad to see, there it is already just giving back to the ecosystem. Really rather spectacular to encounter. And so, of course, well, the root system isn't necessarily that deep, but of course, as soon as there's any intervention, the roots become exposed. It weakens their ability. So presumably it was a windstorm or something that brought this fellow down. Or maybe just, was its time, but get a sense. And this is all gradually giving back. And then way out in the distance, you might be able to focus in on the mountains. Out across the valley might be a little too light. So once again, thank you for wandering with me. I'm back down to the creek now. And so I need to continue on the road trip, but this is the sort of place you must just never miss the opportunity to visit when you can. So I'll head down the stairs and talk to you soon.